Hulk video game, or the Hulk 2003 as generally see fans, specify for a name, was released in, well, in the name 2003, and was made by Ryker Entertainment. I originally played this game as a kid. I got it as a gift from a relative, and until recent years, I didn't even know it was actually a movie tie-in game, or typically a sequel to the film of the same name, with even the voice of Eric Bana reprising his role as Bruce Banner and everything, which is something I didn't know whatsoever, so, I still feel crazy considering the fact this game has unlockable bonuses of behind-the-scenes stuff for the film, and I still didn't notice. The main premise is that set several years after the film, Bruce Banner wishes to rid himself of the Hulk, with his old mentor, Professor Jeffrey Crawford, giving him an offer to remove the Hulk from him, but instead ends up taking an aspect from the Hulk to power himself up into a Hulk-like being, and plans to give the Gamma Orb to a man called the Leader in order to create a Gamma Army. And now it's up to Bruce Banner and the Hulk to put a stop to this entirely. Now, like I said, I don't have the context of the film, but based on what I've pretty much looked up, seems like the bosses in this game are characters taken from the comics and not characters from the film itself, which I think is a pretty cool way of adding in boss fights. Remember other movie tie-in games doing that, where they'll add more comic book characters as opponents in order to add more runtime to a movie tie-in game. So that is pretty cool, and the boss fights in this game are pretty fun, but that's more for the gameplay section. Here's some of the narrative, and overall, the narrative is decent enough, or more so the fact that it has this weird thing where it will basically tell you stuff in the loading screens that I thought were kind of like recaps, but it's recaps of things you're about to see. Like the loading screen will basically tell you what the next cutscene is about to show you. And I feel that's kind of weird, and it doesn't feel like they basically use that to tell the story, I'd say at least a third or half the time, because sometimes there's a bunch of wouldn't be no cutscene story context, but the loading screen will tell you what is going on. So I feel like that's a decent enough compromise. I would prefer to be a cutscene, but with how many levels in the game, I can understand why they would go that route. And like the fact that, the loading screens only transition when you choose to. I hate it when games put loading screen information and then just transition when they feel like it, right and letting the player actually read it. Another thing I'll note is the fact that even as a kid, the voice performance of Eric Bana in this game was always something I remember. There's specifically one line during the game's finale that has been burnt into my memory for when I played this game. So I do have to specify I do really like Eric Bana's performance, and also just how much dialogue he has as Bruce when doing Bruce levels. The fact that he just has internal monologues to himself. I feel like does a pretty good job, especially since sometimes it's gameplay wise where it's like telling you, hey, what you're doing is a good thing, but at times it's just him more thinking to himself of the situation going on. I feel like does a pretty good job at helping, and definitely breaks up the silence in his levels specifically.
And I have never seen eye to eye. We haven't spoken in over 10 years, and somehow he managed to find me. A wanted man on the run. He's desperate for something. So am I. I must stay in control. I have to sneak past those spotlights and move deeper into the compound. If that creature on the docks is to be believed, the Hulk can't be detected here. I have to stay out of trouble.
Also the fact that if you use the cheat code janitor on the computer terminals, you can also unlock the Grey Hulk. And Grey Hulk has full-off dialogue, which can get repetitive because of how much fighting you're doing, you hear them repeatedly. But interestingly, Grey Hulk does also have some lines commenting on the current story scenario or the boss fight he's facing. So I do like that aspect when it comes to the Grey Hulk, if you choose to do so. But like I said, if you pick Grey Hulk, then one, you're going to have to unlock him via cheat code, and two, he's going to get repetitive because he's not going to have too many dialogue prompts when it comes to combat, but he will have dialogue prompts when it comes to the scenario going on in the level.
Rooftops! I can see Alcatraz from here! I need backup!
We're 40 seconds.
Choke! Come on, guys, open fire! cannot win! What's the matter? I want my mommy! I want my mommy! Feel that? That's pride missing. Stay down!
Now for the gameplay, which is broken up into two segments. First, you have Bruce Banner segments, which are stealth-based, and I'm surprised the stealth is actually pretty decently done. I like the fact they have a crouch walk button. I like the fact that they pretty much have, when you're hiding behind stuff, they'll make it see-through so you can always see where Bruce Banner is at all times. If you grab an enemy from behind, it's an instant knockout and their bodies vanishes. Granted, stuff like the punches he has are kind of worthless because it's just better to grab enemies that deals more damage. And also his dodge roll can be a bit awkward to pull off because sometimes it won't work out where you want to, so they'll just crouch. Sometimes they'll pull off where you don't want to. It's also this weird aspect where you can both use the X button to pretty much roll, but you can also double tap the analog stick to roll as well. So you have two different options for that, which feels a bit weird. You also have some very light puzzle segments, which typically get to line up this pretty much password perfectly, and those aren't a bad idea for gameplay. My issue is every single one only gives you 20 seconds to do it, and it's barely enough time to do those. I wish they give you more time, but it's just the only puzzle segment that really Bruce has. There are segments where sometimes you have to push boxes to make platforms. And speaking of which, that could be finicky, because I don't know it's an emulation bug. I see people say it happens on official hardware, but Bruce can sometimes just not climb things at times, or he'll just glitch out when trying to climb stuff, which can make it look like you're just completely stuck and soft locked. But in my experience, in the one level that really uses the boxes, you just align the boxes where there's more space on the platform for Bruce to stand on, then he'll be able to climb just fine. Otherwise, he'll just keep glitching into the void for a few seconds over and over. So that aspect is pretty much a bit weird when it comes to it. Like I said, I don't know if it's an emulation glitch or an official hardware, because I see people say it all over the place when it comes to various versions of this game. Another thing to Bruce stealth levels is what happens when you get caught. If you get caught by one soldier, you can generally deal with it, although them having guns makes it very difficult for you to fight back, but generally it's fine if it's just one person. Now, if it's a level with a spotlight you get caught, you're screwed, because everyone gets alerted to your position, and while you can break the alarm and just get away from them, it is very finicky because sometimes you have to run so far away, and sometimes levels don't give you that much space to get that much distance in order for the alarm to go away. And sometimes you don't have to go that far at all. There's one level where you're in the skies, and you're pretty much fine so long as you don't get close to people, but I just managed to run a good bit, and it managed to pretty much have the alarm no longer be raised, and I was back to stealth and let anyone know where I was at. So there is aspects like that where these stealth can be finicky, but overall, it's pretty damn decent. Honestly, I'd say pretty well done, something considered. That's the thing. I remember this game not being that good, but these stealth segments are way better than I remembered and work pretty fine. If a bit is just not a whole lot to them. But honestly, with some of them going on for so long, I prefer them to be more simple to the point than trying to be overcomplicated. I prefer them being simple and working than complicated and not being nonsensical. Now for most of the gameplay where you're playing as the Hulk, where it's a beat-em-up action game. And interesting enough, you don't get any upgrades in this game, or at least none that I'm aware of. So everything Hulk has at the beginning is all you have, which on one hand means basically you're fully powered from the get-go, but on the other hand, it means that if you start getting tired of the combat, it's not going to change much. There are several enemy types, not a huge amount of them, but you have stuff like soldiers, you have like the freaking big Gamma dogs, you also have like Gamma soldiers later on, and one enemy I hate so much with these shields that can block literally everything. It's waiting for them to put their shield down with a small opening in order to hit them. So there are enemy variety, but you know this game's like 5 to 6 hours long, so I feel like there's enough of them, especially in the later levels where they just reduce the enemy variety to like the same 2 enemy types constantly being spammed at you over and over and over. But interesting enough, you're more about trying to get through the level and actually staying back and fighting, because sometimes enemies will just continuously spawn, so you're more about trying to get through and only fighting when you necessarily have to, especially since enemies will drop stuff like orbs for rage meter or orbs for health. Your rage meter allows you to pretty much go to a rage state that happens automatically, sadly. I would have preferred it was something that player activated, but it makes you way more powerful, way more durable, and gives you this big AoE attack. It is way more powerful than I thought it was, and it is super good. I just wish the player could choose to activate it, right, and be activated the moment the bar is filled, you know? There's also the aspect that, I love this one thing that, obviously, these Haunted locales aren't going to be made for the Hulk in mind, especially with his big size. So I just love the detail that you have these, like, regular-sized doors, and you're always just breaking through it to make a Hulk-sized door. I just love the detail that rarely are you waiting for a door to open or go through it. You are breaking your way through these places. You are destroying things in your path, and you can have visual effects of like cracks in the ground or even destroy parts of the walls. Not huge amount of destruction, but I love the detail that you are the Hulk, so you are just destroying things as you're making your way through. I love the fact that you are just destroying these doors. Like I said, most of the time, doors open for you, you open the door itself. Another cool aspect to the environment my stealth to break is the fact there's stuff you can grab to those weapons, and those objects you grab will always deal more damage than just using your fists, and can also help a situation where being a long distance or huge crowds of enemies. So the fact that you're just incentivized to just go around destroying stuff, you see the pipe on the wall, break that thing off the wall, grab it up, use a weapon, and stuff like that, and that aspect carries over into boss fights. And speaking of boss fights, I like how they do more with the boss fights rather than just being simple 1v1 fight. Like, you have some boss fights where there's stuff in the environment you can use against them. One boss fight in particular, the Hulk can't melee attack them whatsoever, so you have to rely on stuff in the environment, and even stuff you break does eventually respawn, so you always have a constant feed of stuff to use for the fights. But it's also kind of get more creative. I like one where you remove the shields off this generator and you're able to just grab the boss and just throw them at the generator to deal massive damage and stuff like that. So for those bosses, you don't really have to use the environment, but it definitely helps, especially since boss fights in this game generally have two phases, and phase 2 will refill their life bar. So basically you have to take them down twice, which sometimes can feel a bit unfair. You haven't fully gotten the boss down pat, and you just see them get their health back, and you're like, what the hell, man? I will say the only boss fight race that I have trouble with is the final boss, or I guess the penultimate boss, technically, because of the fact that it feels like it's so overwhelming with how much stuff is going on that it can feel like there's just a no-hope situation. But there is one thing this game has that I really love. Enemies can harm each other. You can take advantage of the enemies just blindly firing to have them hit each other or have them hit the boss. There's one boss I fought that summoned in minions, and I just had the minions basically defeat the boss for me because I was very low on HP and didn't want to risk going down. And luckily for me, I kept having the minions shoot the boss in the back and put his health bar. There's one boss who also had minions, and I basically had the boss take care of the minions for me because they had AoE attacks, and I just love how you can pretty much take advantage of the enemies just being able to harm each other to your advantage. It's a freaking cool thing that you can do in this game, and that's awesome. Now for the gripes I have with the game, one being the fact that the game just continues, and you can find more continues throughout the level, although rarely, but I just feel like it just feels weird for a game like this to even have continues. You have continues and a retry button. The retry button will make you restart the level from the beginning, and the levels aren't too long, so even if you have to retry, it's not really that much of a punishment, but it's still a weird idea that even has limited continues to begin with. Like, it just feels unnecessary for this kind of game to include that. Another issue is this one Bruce Banner level where I kept not being sure where to go next, where to progress and go around, and I wasn't sure if I was being hiddenly timed because Bruce kept emphasizing we're out of time and not feeling well. I'm not sure that was tied to the progress of the level, just scripted, or I was actually under a hidden timer and I need to hurry up. But I saw there were visual screen effects happening, getting more and more intense, so I don't know if that was supposed to happen, if that's part just for setting the tone, or if I was actually in danger. But that level didn't feel like a bit of a crapshoot, just kind of wandering back and forth. It wasn't a big level, so it wasn't like I was getting lost. It's just more the idea of where to go next was kind of an issue, which this game generally does well at telling you where to go next, although there are some times where they'll blatantly just either have the camera pan to show you something, or they'll just put a literal green arrow pointing at you where to go next. But that one level, generally it had the green arrows sometimes, but overall you're left to your devices, for the most part, simple to go through, but sometimes I'm like, okay, let me go this way, and this way no longer works anymore, what the hell? So there's stuff like that. Also, like I mentioned earlier in the video, there are cheat codes. There are some cheat codes that you input from the main menu, but then there are some cheat codes you can only input within the game itself. During Bruce Banner levels, there are some terminals you can find that will prompt you for a code, and those are cheat codes you can put in. Like for example, Grey Hulk can only be unlocked if you input the cheat code generator within the game itself. You try to put the cheat code in the main menu, it'll just tell you it can only be activated in the game itself. And honestly, I'm not sure why it's handled like that really. Like, I rather preferred it if all cheat codes were activated in the main menu, or if all cheat codes were handled in-game. Like, the idea of Bruce is basically hacking something and pretty much adding a cheat code himself, that would be like kind of amusing idea, but it's just weird how there's two different places to insert cheat codes, or could just be one. What I'm about to mention is this cool little detail they put, where some of the reasons you're stealthing as Bruce Banner is because of the fact that the task you're doing can't be done with the Hulk, so you have to be Bruce Banner. And a detail I like is that in those levels, when you lose your HP, Bruce doesn't die, he instead falls to his knees, and you start seeing the outline of the gamma radiation, meaning he's turning into the Hulk. And like I said, the mission mentioned how he can't afford to turn into the Hulk. So in those levels, a cool detail where he's not being killed, he's just being full of stress that he's turning into the Hulk, and thus he fails. And there are other levels where you just don't have access to the Hulk for one reason or another, and in those levels, when you lose your HP, then Bruce Banner is dead. I love that little detail developers put in, that this is a failure because turn to the Hulk, there's a failure because Bruce Banner is effing dead. That is a freaking cool detail, and props, and huge props to the devs for including that. Overall, I like the Hulk video game, or the Hulk 203. This is way better than I remember it being. I remember it being not that good of a video game. As a kid, I could only really beat it by using the invulnerability cheat code, Gamma Skin, in order to just pretty much cheese the levels. But replaying it now and actually playing it without using cheat codes, it's just a fun time. Not the most amazing thing. Like I said, the Hulk levels can get repetitive with them sometimes spamming the same enemies over and over, and the fact that there's not much more you can do get with the Hulk, but the Hulk's moveset is fleshed out enough. Listen, I didn't expect replaying this game that freaking Hulk of all people has a stinger maneuver from the Devil May Cry series, where he just thrust forward punching. That is freaking cool that they included a stinger maneuver. So just stuff like that where Hulk is more versatile in this game than you think. Although, it's weird how we both feel stiff at times, but also slippery. Like, if you walk around with Hulk and try to do some turns, you'll notice he slides a bit. He gets a tiny bit of ice physics for some reason that is a bit awkward. Like I said, Bruce Banner's stealth levels work pretty well, but you can tell how they're way more streamlined and more them just pointing you where to go next. So while there is a huge area for failure because you can get caught and die, you can tell how they're more trying to control what you do so that way it's more simple to the point. Like I said, I'd rather have that than something chaotic because I've played way too many games that include stealth sections that don't exactly work out. Interestingly, this game ends on a note where they do leave the door open for another game, and apparently there was one development that got scrapped and instead turned into the beloved Hulk game, Hulk Ultimate Destruction, which is interesting. I always heard very good things about Hulk Ultimate Destruction. Generally, when I've seen these two games of Drain Red Light, people definitely prefer Hulk Ultimate Destruction. Can't remember if that game was inspired by or later inspired Prototype. I think it was like a later inspired Prototype, which is super cool. But overall, this game is good. It's not anything amazing. I think gonna blow your mind, but it's just a fun game I had a fun time revisiting. It was better than I remember, and the one line at the game by Eric Bana, that line still lives rent free in my head ever since I heard it as a kid. Overall, just they did way more in this game than I thought, and hats out to developers. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. Good day.